Hello again, welcome. I'm George Bodarky. I'm the Training Committee Chair of PRNDI and the News Director of WFUV in New York City. Today's webinar, again, is focusing on the legal issues facing our newsrooms, and it is the latest in PRNDI's webinar series. The next one is set to take place on Thursday, March 24th, again at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and at that time we'll be focusing on writing radio leads. So again, that's Thursday, March 24th, if you want to go ahead and jot that down on your calendar. If you should have a question at any time during today's webinar, please use the question box on your control board. It's right to the right of your computer, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can throughout the webinar and at the end of the presentation as well, if there are any remaining questions to get to. Our educator today is Dick Gaylor. Dick is with the law firm of Frost, Brown, Todd. His practice is concentrated in the areas of media law, including digital, interactive, and social media, advertising law, copyright and trademark, and complex intellectual property and business litigation. He represents media clients in all aspects of First Amendment and newsroom-related matters, including pre-broadcast, pre-publication review, news gathering, defense of defamation and privacy claims, and access and freedom of information matters. He handles a wide variety of constantly evolving internet, digital, and interactive media issues, and he is going to be addressing a number of those issues with us this afternoon. Dick, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, George. Thanks for the introduction, and appreciate the invitation to participate in this webinar. And thanks to those who have signed on to participate today. You know, whenever you talk about doing a presentation on media law issues for broadcasters, you know, there's a whole host of issues that, obviously, that we can spend a lot of time on. And working with George and the planning group for today's webinar, we decided to single out what appeared to be some hot topic issues, some things that have obviously come up, I'm sure, in many of your newsrooms on a regular basis. And here's kind of the agenda that will follow for the next 60 minutes or so. The issues that we're going to focus on, recognizing that, you know, there are many media law issues that we could focus on, but today we're going to talk about, we'll start with some news gathering issues and really specifically focus on some issues relating to sources. From there, we'll continue on with some news gathering topics and really focusing on some legal issues that relate to evolving technology. After that, we'll get into some content issues, claims arising from broadcast content, as I'm sure you're aware, primarily defamation and libel claims. We will also focus on issues relating to online digital content, which obviously are an important part of your aspect in your business these days as well. And then hopefully we'll wrap up about 60 minutes from now on fairness, balance issues. The way that I'd like to try to do these webinar presentations is really talk about these legal issues and media law matters from a risk management, best practices standpoint. You will see throughout the webinar that once we address an issue, we'll try to provide some practical tips, some best practices for folks to consider how those might apply in your own newsroom. Again, recognizing partly because of the just the mass amount of information here, we try to deal with these issues on a high-level basis. I think the goal and the focus at a webinar like this really is to help provide some sensitivity and awareness of the potential legal issues and claims that may arise in these areas. So let's get right to it. As I indicated, the first area I'd like to talk about are some news gathering issues that we've kind of labeled special problems relating to sources. And certainly what we've seen in our experience in these claims and legal issues that arise when people are focusing on potentially asserting claims on the broadcast content, often what becomes part of their emphasis and their focus is on the sources. What was the source or sources of the information, and they drill down on identity issues, credibility issues, whether those sources had personal agendas, and the like. What we've seen, if you try to generally categorize, and this is always a little, yes.
I think you're cutting in and out. I'm not sure.
Oh.
If, yeah, but you're back.
Okay. Well,
okay.
I'm not sure what that problem is, but we'll try to stay as focused as we can here.
Yeah.
Let me know if you have audio problems along the way. When you try to categorize source issues or problems relating to sources, this slide indicates, oftentimes we see situations where problems arise because there's been a reliance on an unknown or questionable sources. This often happens after a tip from an unknown or questionable source. Not to indicate that it's bad that you've received that tip, but if there isn't more reporting done beyond just building a story around information provided by an unknown or questionable source. We see issues and oftentimes problems after a story that's based relying on anonymous sources, and not from the standpoint of a source where confidentiality has been promised. We're talking about here the use of anonymous source is a situation where the reporter or journalist doesn't even know the identity of the source, but still believes that they can build a story around that anonymous source. And then again, while certainly no hard and fast rules, not a particularly legal matter as such, but clearly you hear people from time to time talk about you need at least the two source rule. And while there is certainly no legal requirement that be the case, we have certainly seen problems where stories are built on or rely upon a single source, and then later issues relating to that single source crop up. They may be unavailable. They may flip after broadcast, and problems are presented when there are no other sources to back up the story. What we try to look at in vetting a piece, if it's done pre-broadcast, and certainly this is obviously things, whether you see it in a checklist like this screen or
hey, I'm gonna have to interrupt you, Dick, again, because I'm getting someone saying they're only seeing your opening slide. Did you move past the opening slide?
Yes. What are you seeing on your screen?
The opening slide.
Huh. Goodness gracious.
There we go. You're good now.
It's good now?
Yeah. You're moving.
Wow. All right. Are we on factors to consider in weighing reliability of sources?
Right now we are on factors to consider, yes.
All right. Sorry about the technical problems here that we're having. They were moving on my screen, but apparently nobody else was. So we've got audio problems and screen problems. That's not a good start. This is a checklist of factors to consider in weighing reliability of sources. Certainly this is the kind of pre-broadcast checklist that we would go through in vetting a story and looking at whether there may be potential issues relating to sources if someone challenges the content of a broadcast. Most of these, I think, pretty self-explanatory in terms of looking at the issues relating to sources. So we're going to move the screen again. Promises of confidentiality and breach of contract and related claims. Obviously, for those of you who deal with claims or sources where there is a request for confidentiality or an issue relating to promises of confidentiality, this is certainly important for a number of reasons, including the fact that if that promise of confidentiality is not kept on the part of the journalist or broadcaster, it raises some potential legal issues which may end up with the source bringing claims against the station or the journalist for breach of contract and other related claims. So it's clearly something that ought to be taken very seriously when it's discussed. I don't think that this webinar, or really we have the time to talk about all of the different types of policies that newsrooms around the country have with respect to who has the authority to provide a promise of confidentiality. But obviously these are things that need to be talked about with newsroom managers when the question comes up for the journalist who's attempting to get information and in exchange is faced with a request from the source for a promise of confidentiality. Obviously, these issues will impact and relate to various shield laws, which may or may not be present in the jurisdiction in which you're operating. And again, recognizing that there can be serious legal claims arise if these promises of confidentiality are not kept. So we move away from specific issues dealing with sources, and we want to move on to the area of online news gathering. Obviously, today, so much information is available and easily accessible on the internet. That's a good thing, but it does create and raise some legal issues that we need to be aware of, or at least sensitive to, when we are gathering information online. You should see hopefully you see a picture, pretty well-known picture from a couple of years ago, January of 2009. This is the picture of the U.S. Airways plane that was landed in the Hudson. And the question at the top is, can I use Facebook or TwitPic photos, and will I get sued? In this instance, this individual, Janice Crumbs, took this photo and quickly posted it to TwitPic. Numerous news sites immediately used the photo. Was that legal? The issue here, as I'm sure most of you probably recognize, is really a question of it's a copyright issue. Which oftentimes seems to get overlooked when the information is gathered from something posted online or on the internet. There is, and I've heard some people, articulate a feeling that, well, if it's on the internet, it must be in the public domain and available for us to use. And I think that may be a fairly widely held view. The problem is there are copyright issues here. Janice Crumbs clearly was the owner of the copyright in this photo, and so the issue that potentially was raised here when the news sites used her photo, presumably without her direct permission, was whether or not there was a infringement of her copyright infringement. This, as probably you also know, brings in a copyright defense, a copyright infringement defense known as fair use, which is very important clearly in the news reporting context. And so it's really in that context and environment that we look at an issue like this picture. Now I've just moved the screen again. Do you see a new screen called the Fair Use Defense to Copyright Infringement?
Yes.
Well, maybe we're on to something here. This screen just simply restates, if you haven't seen it before, this is the statutory recitation of the fair use defense to a copyright infringement claim. It's set out in Section 107, 17 United States Code, the Copyright Act, and it specifically provides that fair use of a copyrighted work, and then for enumerated purposes such as news reporting, is not an infringement of copyright.